Restaurant manager kicks out Barron Trump over MAGA hat. What he does next shocks everyone. The bustling restaurant on Main Street was known for its trendy ambience, gourmet menu, and notoriously snobbish staff. Every table was packed that afternoon, with patrons enjoying their meals under the warm glow of hanging lights. It was business as usual, until a young man in a crisp suit and a MAGA hat walked through the door. Barron Trump adjusted the brim of his hat as he stepped inside, scanning the crowded restaurant. He wasn't there to cause a scene. He was simply hungry and wanted to grab a quiet lunch. But as he approached the host's stand, heads began to turn, whispers spreading like wildfire across the room. "Is that?" a woman at a nearby table muttered, narrowing her eyes. "Can't be," her companion whispered back. "But he's wearing that hat." At the host's stand, the manager, Greg, sized up Barron with a disapproving scowl. He crossed his arms, stepping in front of the host with an air of authority. "We don't serve people like you here," Greg said, his voice dripping with disdain. "This is a respectable establishment." Barron blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" Greg nodded toward Barron's MAGA hat. "That hat. It's offensive. And we have a policy against political attire that promotes hate." A hush fell over the restaurant as all eyes locked on the unfolding confrontation. Barron remained calm, his eyes steady. "I'm sorry if you feel that way," he said politely. "I'm just here for lunch. I'm not looking for trouble." Greg sneered. "Lunch? Not here. I suggest you find somewhere else." The silence was deafening. No one dared to intervene, though a few patrons exchanged nervous glances. Some seemed amused by the drama, while others watched with growing discomfort. "Please leave," Greg said, pointing to the door. Barron hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right," he said quietly. "If that's how you treat your customers, I'll go." He turned on his heel and walked toward the exit, his back straight, refusing to give Greg the satisfaction of seeing him flustered. As he reached the door, an older man seated near the front of the restaurant stood up, his voice cutting through the tension. "You should be ashamed of yourself," the man said, glaring at Greg. "That young man didn't do anything wrong. You're kicking him out because of a hat? Really?" Greg rolled his eyes. "Mind your own business, sir." But it was too late. The restaurant was buzzing with conversation, and more people began to speak up. "He wasn't bothering anyone," a woman said. "That's discrimination," another added. "You can't just kick someone out because you don't like their hat." Greg's smug expression faltered as the backlash grew louder. His confidence wavered, but he refused to back down. "It's our policy," he insisted. Barron paused at the door, glancing back at the scene. For a brief moment, he considered walking away and letting it go. But something in his gut told him this wasn't just about him. It was about standing up for what was right. He stepped back inside, raising his voice just enough to be heard. "I came here today expecting a simple meal. Instead, I was judged and turned away for expressing myself. I'm not here to argue or cause trouble, but I won't be silent when people are treated unfairly." The room fell silent once again, every eye fixed on Barron. "I believe in kindness and respect for everyone," he continued. "Even if we don't always agree, we should treat each other with decency. That's what makes us stronger, not shutting each other out." A ripple of applause spread through the room, starting with the older man who had first spoken up. Others joined in, clapping and nodding in agreement. Greg, now visibly flustered, glanced around the room, realizing he had lost control of the situation. His face turned red as he struggled to come up with a response. "Perhaps I was too hasty," Greg stammered. "If you'd like to stay, you're welcome to." But Barron shook his head. "Thank you, but I'll pass. I prefer to support places that treat all customers with respect, regardless of what they wear." The applause grew louder as Barron tipped his hat and walked out, leaving Greg standing awkwardly at the host's stand. Outside, Barron took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of frustration and pride. He hadn't planned on making a scene, but he was glad he hadn't backed down. Barron walked down the street, his footsteps steady, his heart still racing from the unexpected confrontation. He hadn't wanted attention, but it seemed that wherever he went, someone was always ready to make a statement at his expense. As he turned the corner, his phone vibrated in his pocket. Pulling it out, he saw dozens of notifications flooding his screen. Messages, missed calls, and social media alerts. Curious, Barron opened his social media app. His face filled the screen, captured in a video posted just minutes ago by a patron at the restaurant. The video showed the entire encounter, from Greg's initial dismissal to Barron's calm yet firm response. It was already going viral. Thousands of views, likes, and comments were pouring in at lightning speed. This young man just stood up for his rights with incredible grace. Respect. Can't believe a restaurant would treat someone like that. Disgraceful. Barron Trump handled that way better than I would have. What a class act. Barron sighed, running a hand through his hair. He hadn't meant for this to turn into a public spectacle. All he wanted was a quiet lunch. But now it was out there for the world to see. He looked up as a black SUV pulled to the curb beside him. The window rolled down, revealing his security detail. "Mr. Trump," the driver said, his tone professional but concerned. "We've been monitoring the situation. Would you like a ride back home?" Barron nodded. "Yeah, let's get out of here." Back at the Trump residence, Barron sat in the living room, scrolling through news articles. Several media outlets had already picked up the story. Headlines ranged from "Barron Trump kicked out of restaurant over MAGA hat" to "Trump family responds to viral video." His phone buzzed again. This time, it was his mother, Melania. "Barron," her familiar voice came through the line, calm but firm. "Are you all right?" "Yeah, Mom," Barron said, leaning back in his chair. "It was nothing really. Just a misunderstanding." Melania paused. "It doesn't look like nothing. The video is everywhere." "I know," Barron admitted. "But I wasn't going to let that guy treat me, or anyone else, like that. It's not right." A smile crept into Melania's voice. "You handled it well. With dignity and strength. I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Mom," Barron said softly. "I didn't mean for it to blow up like this, though." "Sometimes things happen for a reason," Melania said. "You've turned a difficult situation into an opportunity to show people how to stand up for themselves without losing their composure. That's a lesson many need to see." The following morning, the story had reached new heights. News anchors debated the incident on morning shows, and opinion pieces flooded the internet. While some critics tried to twist the narrative, the overwhelming majority of people praised Barron's calm and collected response. By midday, several well-known figures had weighed in on social media. A lesson in grace under pressure. "Well done, Barron." At Public Figure 1. No one should be judged for expressing their beliefs. Barron Trump showed incredible maturity in that moment. At Journalist Voice. "We could all learn a thing or two from this young man." At Motivational Speaker. Meanwhile, the restaurant itself was in damage control mode. Greg, the manager, had issued a public apology, but the backlash was swift and relentless. Reviews for the restaurant tanked overnight, with hundreds of one-star ratings flooding their page. Barron shook his head as he read the apology statement. It felt hollow, clearly written to protect the restaurant's reputation rather than express genuine remorse. Later that afternoon, Barron received a call from a familiar voice, his father. "Barron," Donald Trump said, his tone a mix of curiosity and pride. "I saw the video. You were great out there." "Thanks, Dad," Barron said. "I didn't expect it to go viral." Donald chuckled. "That's how these things work nowadays. One small moment, and suddenly everyone's talking about it. But listen, what you did was important. You stood up for yourself and did it with class. People notice that kind of thing." Barron nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I just didn't want to back down, but I also didn't want to escalate it." "Exactly," Donald said. "That's the difference between a leader and someone who loses control. You kept your cool and it showed. Trust me, this won't be the last time you'll face something like this. But now the world knows you can handle it." As the week went on, the story took on a life of its own. Barron received countless messages from people thanking him for speaking out. Many shared their own experiences of being judged or dismissed for their beliefs and how his example had given them the courage to stand tall. But the most unexpected development came when the restaurant announced it was closing temporarily to reassess its policies and undergo sensitivity training. Greg, the manager at the center of the controversy, was placed on indefinite leave. Barron couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was glad that the incident had sparked change. On the other, he hadn't wanted anyone to lose their job. A few days later, Barron received a letter in the mail. It was from Greg. "Dear Barron, I owe you an apology, not just for what happened that day, but for the way I treated you. I was wrong. I let my biases get the best of me, and it wasn't fair to you or anyone else. Since the incident, I've had a lot of time to reflect. I'm working on becoming a better person, and I want to thank you for teaching me an important lesson. I hope one day I can make things right. Greg." Barron folded the letter and set it on his desk, his thoughts swirling. He appreciated the apology, it felt sincere, but he knew that true change would take time. Still, it was a step in the right direction. He looked out the window, thinking about everything that had happened. In the end, it wasn't about the hat, the restaurant, or even the viral video. It was about standing up for what you believe in, staying calm under pressure, and being willing to take a stand, no matter who's watching. And Barron knew that if the situation ever arose again, he'd be ready. Barron sat in his study, still contemplating the letter from Greg. The sincere tone of the message lingered in his mind. In some ways, it was a reminder that even the most challenging moments could become opportunities for growth. His phone buzzed on the desk, snapping him back to the present. It was an alert, a trending hashtag with his name attached to it. Hashtag Barron Trump Inspires was taking over social media. Countless posts were flooding in from people who had taken courage from his calm response. Many shared stories of being treated unfairly for their beliefs and how his example had inspired them to handle situations with dignity and strength. Barron scrolled through the posts, pausing on one from a young woman named Rachel. "I was denied a job because of my political beliefs. Watching Barron stand tall gave me the strength to keep fighting for what's right. Thank you for showing us how to rise above." A pang of responsibility washed over Barron. He hadn't expected to become a symbol of resilience, but the outpouring of support and shared stories made him realize that he had inadvertently stepped into a larger role. People were looking to him for guidance. A few days later, Barron decided to take action. He arranged to visit a local youth center that focused on leadership and personal development. If his story had sparked something positive, he wanted to keep the momentum going by encouraging young people to embrace their individuality and stand strong in the face of adversity. The youth center buzzed with excitement as Barron arrived. A group of teenagers gathered in the main hall, eagerly waiting to hear what he had to say. The center's director, Ms. Flores, introduced him with a warm smile. "We're honored to have Barron Trump with us today," she said. "He's here to share some words of wisdom and answer any questions you might have." Barron stepped up to the microphone, his heart beating a little faster. Public speaking wasn't something he did often, but he knew this was important. "Hey, everyone," he began, his voice steady. "I'm not here as a politician's son or someone who went viral. I'm just here as a person who believes in standing up for what's right." The room grew quiet, everyone hanging on his words. "A few days ago, I found myself in a situation where someone tried to put me down because of what I was wearing. It could have been easy to get angry or lash out, but I knew that wouldn't help. Instead, I chose to stay calm and speak up respectfully. And what I learned from that experience is something I want to share with you today." He paused, scanning the room. "No matter who you are or what you believe, there will always be people who try to judge you or put you in a box. But you don't have to let them. You have the power to rise above it. Stay true to who you are, and don't let anyone silence you." The teens nodded, some whispering to each other. A hand shot up from the middle of the room, a boy in a blue hoodie. "How do you stay calm when people are coming at you?" the boy asked, his voice hesitant. Barron smiled. "That's a great question. It's not always easy, but I've found that taking a deep breath and remembering that I'm in control of my reaction helps a lot. You can't always control what people say or do, but you can control how you respond. And sometimes, your calm response can say more than any argument ever could." The boy nodded thoughtfully, his shoulders relaxing a little. Another hand went up, a girl with curly hair and glasses. "What would you say to someone who feels like they don't fit in?" Barron leaned forward slightly. "First, I'd say you're not alone. A lot of people feel that way, even if they don't show it. And second, I'd say that fitting in isn't the goal. Being yourself is. The world needs more unique voices and perspectives. Don't be afraid to be different. That's what makes you special. The room erupted in applause. Barron's words struck a chord with the teens, many of whom had faced their own struggles with identity and acceptance. After the talk, Barron stayed for hours, chatting with the teens and answering more questions. They shared their dreams, their fears, and the challenges they faced every day. Some asked for advice on dealing with bullies, while others simply wanted to know how to build confidence. By the time he left the center, Barron felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was bigger than a viral video or a brief media storm. This was about empowering people, especially young people, to believe in themselves and stand tall in the face of adversity. The next morning, Barron's phone lit up with messages from the youth center. Ms. Flores had sent him photos from the event, along with a heartfelt thank you note. "You made a bigger impact than you realize," the note read. "The teens haven't stopped talking about your visit. You gave them something they've been missing, hope and strength. Thank you for being a role model." Barron stared at the message, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. It was the kind of validation that reminded him why he had stood his ground in the first place. He hadn't set out to be anyone's role model, but now that he knew he had to make the most of it. His mind raced with ideas. What if he started a program to help young people build confidence and resilience? What if he created a platform where they could share their stories and support each other? The possibilities were endless, and for the first time in a long time, Barron felt like he had found his true calling. He picked up his phone and dialed Miss Flores. "Hey, Miss Flores," he said. "I've been thinking, how would you feel about collaborating on a bigger project? Something that could reach even more young people?" Miss Flores's voice lit up with excitement. "I love that idea. Let's make it happen." And just like that, a new chapter began. A chapter filled with purpose, growth, and the unshakable belief that one person's voice could change the world. Barron leaned back in his chair, his thoughts racing as he mapped out the next steps for his new initiative. The excitement from his conversation with Miss Flores had lit a fire in him. This wasn't just about helping young people in one community, it was about creating a movement that could inspire kids across the country and even around the world. The idea was ambitious, but if there was one thing Barron had learned, it was that no dream was too big if you were willing to work for it. The first step was assembling a team. Barron reached out to a few trusted mentors, including youth advocates, educators, and motivational speakers, to form a group that could help him turn his vision into reality. He wanted the initiative to focus on 3 key areas: building confidence, handling adversity with grace, and promoting kindness and inclusion. Within weeks, the initiative had a name: the Stand Tall Project. The mission was simple but powerful: empower young people to stand tall in the face of challenges, celebrate their uniqueness, and build a network of support that would uplift and inspire them. The official launch event was held at a large community center in New York City. The room was packed with young people, parents, educators, and media representatives. Bright banners with the Stand Tall Project logo hung from the walls, and a palpable sense of excitement filled the air. Barron stood backstage, watching the crowd gather. He took a deep breath, feeling a familiar flutter of nerves in his stomach. Public speaking had become easier, but this event was different. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all the young people who needed to hear that they mattered, that they weren't alone. Miss Flores gave him a reassuring nod. "You've got this," she said with a smile. Barron stepped onto the stage, the room falling silent as he approached the microphone. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "When I stood in front of a group of young people at the youth center just a few weeks ago, I had no idea that it would lead to this. But as I listened to their stories, I realized something important. There are so many of us who felt judged, misunderstood, or underestimated at some point in our lives." He paused, scanning the crowd. "But those moments don't define us. What defines us is how we respond, how we rise above, how we stay true to who we are, and how we support each other along the way. That's what the Stand Tall Project is all about. It's about creating a space where we can celebrate our differences and build each other up instead of tearing each other down." The audience erupted in applause, and Barron smiled, feeling a rush of gratitude. He continued, sharing the story of his experience at the restaurant and how it had sparked the idea for the initiative. He spoke about the importance of staying calm under pressure, standing up for what's right, and finding strength in community. As we launch this project, Barron concluded, I want each of you to know that your voice matters. Your story matters. And together, we can create a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. The applause was deafening. As Barron stepped off the stage, dozens of young people rushed to meet him, eager to share their own stories and ask how they could get involved. In the weeks that followed, the Stand Tall project gained incredible momentum. Schools began incorporating the initiative's workshops into their programs, and community centers across the country reached out to collaborate. Social media exploded with the hashtag #StandTall, as young people shared photos and stories of how they had overcome adversity and found strength in their individuality. One story, in particular, caught Barron's attention: a boy named Leo who had been bullied for years because of his stutter. After attending a Stand Tall workshop, Leo found the confidence to join his school's debate team. He sent Barron a video of his first debate competition, where he stood in front of a room full of people, delivering his argument with passion and clarity. Thank you for helping me believe in myself, Leo wrote in the message. I never thought I'd be able to do this, but now I know I can. Barron watched the video twice, a lump forming in his throat. Moments like these made all the hard work worth it. As the Stand Tall project grew, Barron found himself busier than ever. He traveled across the country, visiting schools and community centers, meeting with educators, and working closely with his team to develop new programs. His parents, Melania and Donald, became some of the project's biggest supporters, attending events and helping raise funds. At one particularly memorable event in Los Angeles, Melania spoke about the importance of kindness and empathy, sharing her own experiences and encouraging parents to be role models for their children. We must teach our children to be kind and brave, she said. Barron's journey has shown us that one voice can make a difference. Imagine what we can do when we lift each other up and stand together. The event ended with a standing ovation, and Barron couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. His family's support meant the world to him, and their involvement only strengthened the initiative's reach. But with success came challenges. As the Stand Tall project grew, it faced criticism from detractors who accused it of being too political or questioned Barron's motives. Some tried to twist the narrative, turning it into something it wasn't. Barron learned quickly that not everyone would be supportive, but he refused to let the negativity deter him. He held a press conference to address the critics, speaking calmly and confidently. The Stand Tall project is not about politics or personal agendas, he said. It's about empowering young people and creating a culture of kindness and resilience. That's something we can all support, regardless of our differences. His response was widely praised, and the initiative continued to thrive. A year after its launch, the Stand Tall project had become a national movement. Thousands of young people had participated in its workshops, and countless lives had been transformed. Barron stood at the center of it all, humbled by the impact and determined to keep pushing forward. At the project's first anniversary celebration, he stood on stage once again, reflecting on how far they had come. This past year has been a journey I never expected, he said. But it's taught me that when we come together and lift each other up, there's no limit to what we can achieve. The Stand Tall project is proof that change is possible. And we're just getting started. The audience rose to their feet, cheering and clapping as Barron smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment he couldn't put into words. In that moment, he knew that this was his calling, to be a voice for those who felt unheard, to inspire others to stand tall, and to build a world where everyone had a chance to rise above and shine.